There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study. We are live. We are live on the website. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Periscope. We are not live on Facebook because Facebook doesn't want me, and I'm not even sure how much longer Twitter and Periscope are going to want me. But we're here. We're live. We are here to read and study the Constitution, to teach the rising generation to be free, to learn what our rights are, to be prepared to defend, to recognize when they're being violated, and be prepared to defend and assert them. I'm glad you could join me. As always, I'll be taking questions. If you have a question, put it in the chat. Should show up on my screen. I will get to a little later in the broadcast, but I love answering questions. Excuse me, I got just a little bit of a thing in my throat, so if I look a little odd, that's just me. Anyway, we're here. We're having a great time. It's been an interesting 2021. February has been kind of cool. We've got a couple of homeschool events that I'm going to. We're looking for some more volunteers to work on state constitution classes. So maybe you know I've been working with the Institute on the Constitution. They have a program in place to basically develop a class for each of the constitutions of the 50 states. And they are looking for people both to help with the funding and to volunteer to work on that. So if you're at all interested, please reach out to me. I'll put you in touch. We can find out more. The Constitution Scholars is officially, it's announced, it's up, it's running. I got about 50 members on it right now, which is pretty good. I am looking for more. If you're interested, head over to the website, constitutionscholars.com. You can sign up for free, get your free account, gain access. Yes, there's videos, and yes, there's a library, but what I really want this to be is a place where people can find each other, talk with each other, engage in conversation, learn by talking with others, not simply shouting at them. And so please head over to the website, again, constitutionscholars.com. With that, today I want to talk about what I'm referring to as the American Monarchy. That's right. Back in 1776, we said we've had it with monarchs. We're going to throw them out. In fact, it is actually illegal to have a title of nobility for any government official in the United States, but we have a monarchy. Actually, it's funny because we have a monarchy, we also have an oligarchy, but today I'm going to talk about the monarchy. And who's the monarch? Well, let me ask you a question. Who here has heard the president referred to as the most powerful man in the world? Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's not legally the case. He is the most powerful man in the world because we and our representatives sit back and let it happen. We let him exercise power he doesn't have. We don't punish him for doing so. In fact, Congress not only encourages the executive to have more and more power, they do it legislatively. They basically, basically they write laws and say, yeah, sort of kind of do something, and we'll let some executive department figure it out, or some executive agency, a second executive department head will figure out the details. We'll let them write all the laws. We're just going to say, we're going to create a executive agency, we'll create a law, and we'll let someone else figure out the details. That's not good. But that's not even what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about is, let's see, where did I put? Oh, yeah. So I looked it up this morning. I looked this up this afternoon to make sure I have the latest numbers. So between January 20th of this year and today, February 11th of this year, our commander-in-chief, our monarch on high, has signed 30 executive orders. He's also signed 7 presidential memoranda. Not quite sure what that's supposed to be. And he's got 2 more that he's signed, but they haven't actually been revealed yet. They haven't been put into place. In other words, we have a man in Washington who is now ruling by edict. He doesn't care what the Constitution says. He doesn't care about the rule of law. He doesn't care about the legislative process. He is simply going to write an executive order to do whatever it is he wants to do. He's taking Obama's pen and a phone mentality, and he is taking it to the next level. Let's see, what are the types of things that he is? And again, if I've told you once, I've told you 100 times, the titles are usually the opposite of what these things really are. So what do we have? We have, one of my personal favorites, we have the implementation of systemic racism in the federal government. No, not the banning of systemic racism, the establishment of systemic racism. That we were going to take a racist view. We are going to judge people by the color of their skin, and we're going to use that as a standard when we hire people, when we create laws. We're going to apportion representation in the House, not based on the number of citizens in each state, but however many people can feel like they show up. That's pretty cool. And again, these are not laws. And some of them, I haven't read them all. I'll be honest. Actually, I usually try to be honest. I'm telling you, I haven't read them all, but many of them are kind of tricky. See, what they like to do is maybe monarch isn't the best representation for the president. Maybe Mafia Don is a better example. Because look how this all comes about. You have the federal government saying, hey, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. I'll give you money. He tells the states, he tells the people, we'll give you money. And then when he tries to do something, he'll just say, you know what? I'm not going to tell the states they have to do this. I'm going to tell the executive department that oversees the money that if they don't do this, you're to cut off the money. Yeah, that sounds a bit more like a Mafia Don to me than does a true monarch. But that's what governing in America has become, again, because the American people have let it happen. Sure, the states haven't done their jobs, Congress hasn't done its job, but ultimately, we let it happen. Why? Well, better yet, not why, how? How did we let this happen? Sure, we elected people to office who said, hey, we'll simply pass these vague laws. We elected people to office to say, you know what? The federal government is going to take this over. We're going to take over healthcare. We're going to take over the student loan program. We're going to take over public transportation. We're going to take over the schools. We'll just come in and we'll write laws that say we're going to take over. And we hired them. Yeah, we hired them. The states have hired Biden as president. Now, whether or not you think there was the problems with the 2020 election were sufficient to have changed the outcome, the states let that happen because it was the states that ran the elections. And the people in those states hired the people that let that happen. So we have all of this building. We have all of this malfeasance growing to the point where the federal government really doesn't care about the Constitution anymore. I just edited a video that'll come out Monday talking about how a man sued a college on a freedom of speech issue, and the Supreme Court seemed to spend most of its time debating, well, he only asked for nominal damages. Is that enough? Really? We're not as worried about the rights being infringed upon as we are how much damage he wants. But it gets even, this is the part that really scares me. You see, the illegal activity out of Washington. Let's face it, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. When you violate the Constitution, you are violating the supreme law of the land. Use it, whatever euphemism you want, call it unlawful, unconstitutional, illegal. They are violating the law. But we also know from both Alexander Hamilton and the Supreme Court that those laws that are made contrary to the Constitution are void. So what makes me nervous? Well, how long before the American people get so fed up with the corruption that they start taking that to heart? They look at what Washington's doing and saying, sorry, you have no legal authority for that. We're just going to ignore you. How long before they start doing it at the state level? And when they do, what is Washington going to do? Sure, if you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are doing it, you're one in a crowd. But what I see is not a pretty picture, because we have allowed the president, the office of President of the United States, to become a monarch, to rule by order and by edict, to violate the Constitution without consequence. And we, the people, have done nothing about it. We have accepted the bribe of federal money and are, at this point, more than willing to accept whatever they do so they don't shut off the money flow. We are a bribed people. So when I look at these executive orders, and again, most of this stuff is, it's crap. It's stuff that even the idea that the federal government is involved in these things are unconstitutional. Let's see. Unified and effective response to COVID-19, not constitutional. Combating discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation. Nothing in the Constitution talks about that except the right to vote. Let's see, ethics committees, protecting the public health. I love it. Protecting the public health and environment and restoring science to tackle the climate crisis. What climate crisis? The only climate crisis is in the head of people who make money from the climate crisis. They keep saying, I saw a clip of AOC saying we have 12 more years. Really? That's what they've been saying for the last 20 years, 30 years? So what do we see? We see a single man. And again, whether you think he's writing them, whether you think he's just signing them, you see an executive branch that is ruling by diktat, not by law, not by legislation, but by whim, which is why we end up with this mess. In fact, let me pull this up because it's one of my favorite quotes from George Washington, at his farewell address. Whoops, where'd he go? There you go. He said, the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetuated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. This leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. What do we see happening? We see an office of president that more and more power has been vested in, illegally vested in. And then every time it switches parties, we see these huge swings in policy and in regulation. And everyone wonders why. We are living in a despotic time because we have created an office that is prone to despotism. And then we're shocked when people who actually get into that office act like despots. And again, I don't care whether you like the guy in office or not. That is what this has become. And it's done so in large part because, A, while this was growing, the American people did nothing. As it got larger, the American people not only bought into it, they've hyped it. How often have you heard, something goes on and someone says, oh, there should be a law? Why? Well, what's the president going to do about the budget? The president has no control over the budget. What's the president going to do about the deficit? The president has no control over the deficit. None. What's the president going to do about? We keep looking for someone. We are looking for a savior, and we don't have one. We're never meant to have one. George Washington went on and says, the disorders and miseries at which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later, the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this despotism to the purpose of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. Yeah, basically that's it. Can you think of a better description of America today? We have two parties now, and they are so mad at each other that there's no rational reaction there's no rational response to what's going on. There's no what's what I'm looking for. There's no again, there's no reason, there's no rationality. They complain that I can't say, I'm trying to get that. Sorry, I'm just checking with the video. Got a little distracted. There's no rationality. It's like, if my guy does it, it's fine. If your guy does it, it's the worst kind of evil. And it's gotten I don't want to say it's simply gotten worse over the last few years, but it's gotten worse. The only thing I see in the future is either we continue to we continue to act as subjects of the federal government, or people start waking up and realizing that a lot of what Washington does is legally void. Now, it doesn't mean they're not going to try and enforce it. Even the Supreme Court in Marbury versus Madison said, gee, if this law is void, do we still apply it? But it's one of the reasons why I say we need to look more locally. You need to be engaged with your sheriff. You need to be involved in your county to help protect you from the craziness that continues to go on. Because only then can we begin to live free again, when we are sheltered from some of this insanity. So let's see, I've been chatting for a while. I know I've got some comments here. Let's see what we got. What do we got coming up on the screen here? Hey, glad to see we're up in Wyoming. I wonder what the weather's like up there. I haven't been up that way for several months. I was in North Dakota a couple times, but I live in Tennessee because I don't have to shovel sunshine. How can people rein in the political class? They have long abandoned us and refuse to listen. There are several ways. The first way, which is probably the most obvious way, is treat your vote like you're hiring an employee, because it's basically what you're doing. Don't vote. I don't care which party you vote for, but if you vote for the party line, then you're part of the problem, because parties aren't the solution. It's real simple. If the person currently holding the office is not upholding their oath of office, why vote for them? We have to take responsibility for our votes. Now, as an individual, one vote doesn't change the big picture. But we have to start with, my responsibility is to vote only for people who uphold their oath of office. Second, once they're in office, they should know you. It's not enough to vote and then walk away. You have to vote, you have to be it, but then you have to be in there, you have to be talking to them. if not the office holder themselves, their staff should be aware of you, who you are. They should know that if you send them if you call them or send them an email, you're going to ask them. You're not going to be a bully, right? I think too often we think we go in and stomp our feet and yell and scream. And let's face it, most politicians, when someone calls them, it's because they want something from them. So we should really go in there and talk with them, ask them why, but then have good answers as to why they should or why they shouldn't. And then the third, and again, probably the scariest one is, if a law is void, are we prepared to simply disregard it and suffer the consequences? I have a video I've been reviewing, and for the person who sent me the link to the video, I have watched the video. I'm actually trying to get some comments from people I know in law enforcement so I can give a balanced response as to, I believe there was mistakes made on both sides, and I want to get some more information before I actually come out with an answer. So I have got the video. I did watch it. Hopefully I'll be talking about it here before too much longer. But, for example, like I said, last year I was at an event and the county had a mask mandate. I refused to wear a mask, and they said, well, the organizer came over and said, well, they should leave us alone. But I said, hey, I don't care. I'm not wearing a mask. And they're breaking the law if they try to make me wear a mask, and I've got the proof here. And she was shocked when I told her things like, oh, yeah, you're depriving me of my Fifth Amendment rights, my 14th Amendment protected rights. And, you're violating 18 USC 242. And yes, I have a Supreme Court precedent for what I'm saying is true, and all that. And her response was, well, if the police show up, I'm sending them to your table. Fine. But am I the only one there that's prepared to defend and assert my rights? Am I the only one there willing to suffer the consequences? That's the other thing I keep getting. Well, I'll be arrested. What is your liberty worth? What is the liberty of your children worth? You think freedom of speech is under attack now? Do you think it's going to get any better if we continue to knuckle under both to governments and to private organizations that are stifling free speech? Really? Because we've tried that. We've tried that. I've been on this earth 50 plus years. I can think back at least 50 of those years of people telling me, well, yes, it's wrong, but you got to go along with it because it'll get better. We'll find the right people to get better, and it ain't getting better. It's getting worse. So we need to treat the political class. We need to treat our employees as employees. We hire them to represent us. They have an oath of office that requires them to abide by one or more constitutions. Those are the responsibilities. If you cannot do that job, then we will fire you and find someone else. And I don't care about what programs you send home. And I don't care about which political party will get in power. I do not care. If I can't trust you to abide by your oath of office, I can't trust you to do this job in my name. Find your representative, state level, federal level, look at them, find their voting record, and ask yourself, would you be comfortable standing in front of your family and saying, I signed each and everything this person voted for? Because in effect, you are. They are doing it in your name, by your authority. And we need to start treating them as our employees. They are not our leaders. They are not our bosses. They are our employees, and we need to treat them as such. And if they can't abide by the code of conduct, then they get fired, period. End of story. I don't care. Okay. Is it true Alexander Hammer purposely added the Commerce Clause, knowing full well be interpreted? Well, I don't listen. I wasn't there. I didn't talk to Alexander Hamilton. The reason we have a Commerce Clause, understand what the Commerce Clause says. It says that Congress has the authority to regulate commerce among the several states with foreign nations and with the Indian tribes. Now think about that for just a second. Again, we have states, full-fledged states, all the power of any other state. Foreign states, Indian tribes, foreign nations. The reason we have a commerce clause is because when you're dealing with parties between states, who's in charge? Between states, between a state and a foreign entity, who's going to be who's going to set the standard? Because we don't want different rules for foreign commerce in each of the 50 states. Just imagine what would happen if, a ship's coming over from France and it's loaded with goods, and if they dock in Virginia, well, they pay one tax, and then they go and they dock in Georgia and they pay another tax, and then they go dock in Florida and they pay another tax. You would kill commerce. The other was they didn't want the states taxing commerce between them. They didn't want, I live in Tennessee. So if, I'm doing business with somebody out of Maryland, they didn't want each state figuring out how we're going to deal with these separately. This is no, we're going to have a uniform standard, and it's going to be done by Congress, the representatives of the people and the representatives of the states. The problem is we've forgotten what the Commerce Clause means, right? The Commerce Clause means Congress, not the executive. Congress can regulate commerce. So when Joe Biden signs an executive order about you wearing masks in public transportation, no, sorry, that's legal, that's illegal, that's void, that's unconstitutional, that has no weight, no force. And if you try to do, and sure, you could bully me into compliance. You could slap the cuffs on me and drag me off to jail. But it's void. And when he said, because when they say, oh, by the way, you have to wear masks on flights. Well, again, that's interstate transport. Maybe you could make the case that, okay, if I'm paying to fly from one state to another state, that's interstate commerce. Maybe you could make that point. And you could probably make the point that most flights in the United States probably cross state border. I don't know what the percentage is, but you could certainly make the point that a significant percentage of flights cross state borders. Doesn't matter. If I go down to my airport and I hop on a plane, if I go to the Nashville airport, I hop on a plane, I fly to Knoxville, I've remained within the state of Tennessee. Federal government has absolutely no legal authority to tell me anything I have to do. Period. End of story. I don't care. Now, the airline might say, well, yeah, but we have to do it for interstate flights, and we just want to set one policy to make life easy. That's different. Biden has no authority to do that. That's Congress. Why isn't Congress writing these laws? Because we've turned the president into a monarch. I would ask your liberal professor, prove it. Where's your proof? Where's your evidence? Because way too often, and I see this a lot, I see a lot of people simply say, well, this is true. Yeah, based on what? And they couldn't find a cognizant answer if their life depended on it. So Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist. He did believe in a strong central government, but I have seen no writings about the Commerce Clause that dealt with anything other than we want to have a standard when we're dealing with states, whether they're part of the Union or not. Because remember, each state is a sovereign country when we were created in 1776. They are free and independent states with all the same powers and privileges of any other state like France or Great Britain. We've lost that. So, yes, Hamilton did want a powerful, he didn't want, what the Federalists were looking for was not necessarily a big government. They wanted a powerful government. Right? They wanted a government that, they wanted a central government that had teeth. Because you have to remember, when we declared independence in 1776, in I think it was 82, we ratified the Articles of Confederation. Articles of Confederation created what we now call the United States. They named the Union the United States of America. They created a Congress, but the Congress had no power. They could pass laws, but they couldn't enforce them. They could pass rules and regulations, but they couldn't enforce them. So the Federalists wanted to make sure that whatever powers were delegated to the central government were enforceable, right? They wanted power. They didn't necessarily want big, because Hamilton also said that any act, Federalist Papers number 78, any act of a delegated authority contrary to the commission it is formed under is void. Does that sound like somebody that wants a big government, a big central government that can do whatever it wants? He said, listen, if what they do is violation of the Constitution, it's void, it's empty, it's meaningless. So, and again, I don't care if it's a professor or someone you find on social media, ask for the proof. There is a lot of myth going out there that people, it gets repeated, but nobody actually bothers to find out, is it actually true? Do I think the unconstitutional laws are null and void argument would hold up in court? Well, let me ask you this. A court is part of the government. Do I think a simple unconstitutional laws are void would hold up in court? I would say it depends. Because if all you do is walk in there and say, I don't care, Judge, this law is void because Alexander Hamilton said so, that's not going to work too well. It's the details that matter. I had somebody contact me. Her husband actually won a case against their county, in part because he knew the Constitution. So if you go into a court of law and you look at the judge and say, I'm sorry, Judge, but I have a right protected by the Constitution to live at liberty. My liberty cannot be deprived of me without due process of law. Where is the due process in this? Doesn't happen. The state you say state have police powers. Excuse you, where does that show up in the Constitution? It does not. The Constitution says that the state cannot pass a law that deprives me of my life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And yes, by the way, Alexander Hamilton did say they are null and void. By the way, that's also Supreme Court precedent. Please refer to Marbury versus Madison of 1802, I believe. If it's part of a cogent argument, it's not this magic saying, that's null and void. That's anarchy. But if it's part of a cogent argument where you look around and you say, and again, I don't refer to it as civil disobedience, right? There's a reason why it is peaceful noncompliance, because I'm not being disobedient. I am applying superior law. I have a great answer. Unfortunately, it comes from my technology background, so I want to. But well, have you ever played a card game where certain cards are wild, certain cards are trumps, certain cards are special? Well, that's kind of the way it works with the law, right? I have counties can make ordinances, and I have states can pass laws, but they've got to be within the bounds of the state constitution. In other words, the state constitution trumps state law. Well, the federal constitution trumps federal law not made pursuant to the Constitution. It trumps state law, not and it trumps state constitutions. That's Article 6, Clause 2. So you have to go into it and make a cogent argument. Will it hold up in court? Really depends on the judge. Does the judge, is the judge prejudge the case and not listening to any argument or reason? Or is the judge going to say, yeah, maybe, But if you're not armed with a cogent argument, if way too many people. I see this. I was watching the video, and they have this phrase like it's a magic talisman. If I just say these words, poof, the bad guy. It's like Thanos, right? I say the magic words, and all the bad laws disappear. And it doesn't work that way. You're dealing with people, and in the case of a court, you're dealing with a government agent that has been trained through a system that doesn't study the Constitution. So you can look at it either to argue with them or to educate them. But I'm going to keep going back. Is it only true if the court says so? See, then we've lost. Then we don't have a free republic. We have an oligarchy. And if you happen to hold a position of power with a black robe, well, then you get to determine what is and isn't law. That's not a free nation. Doubt him, excuse me, anything like that when you read the Federalist Papers? Oh, I'm assuming you're talking about the. Okay, Patriots have kind of let these tyrants go to. Well, again, yeah, and this is what I keep getting back to. When the problems were small, our parents, our grandparents, and us, we didn't deal with it, and we let it become a big problem. Now, whether you call it the broken windows policing, or you use maybe a biblical reference, if you have a small problem and you don't deal with it, it grows, and we are dealing with we're dealing with a century and a half of festering infection in both the government and the American people. And we're not going to fix it right away. But we're not going to snap our fingers and fix this. But it's not going to change unless we start changing how we deal with it. And we still have to, you talk about going to court. You know what? I remember the video of the lady in Texas looking at a judge saying, "Hey, judge, if you think some stupid rule is more important than feeding my children, you go do what you got to do, and I'll do what I got to do." When are we going to do that? When are more people going to stand up? I'm reminded there's two videos from last year that I'm going to be referring to in a class I'm teaching at one of the conferences. And in one case, I believe it's a restaurant in Buffalo with a health inspector and two sheriff's deputies show up, and the guy's basically saying, "Where's your warrant?" And he won't let them go anywhere without a warrant. And then there's the other one of the lady and her mother watching the son play some outdoor game, and they're like outdoors in bleachers, 20 feet apart from everybody. And some cop walks up and tries to arrest this lady, and she refuses. The main difference between those two incidents, in the case of the restaurant, the people stood up and supported the person defending their rights. In the case of the mother watching her son, the people who weren't taking video simply turned their head in shame. See, it's not simply the individual. The individual is a target. It's when they're supported by numbers that makes a difference. So you know what? If one person is standing in court, it's a lot easier to knock them down than if you have a couple of dozen people in the gallery that simply will not abide by an unconstitutional judge. But I'm also old enough to remember a gentleman by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I also remember he was sent to jail more than once for doing what was right. What is your liberty worth? All right, let's see. It isn't over. A revival and patriots read the Federalist Papers and Constitution, not including being imposed. I am pleased to see the increased interest in rights and liberty. A couple of things. Tunnel Lord. One is if you're going to read the Federalist Papers, then please read the Anti-Federalist Papers. If you read one without the other, you're only getting one side of the story. And it's important that we understand both sides of the story. It's important, actually, that you read the Declaration of the Constitution. If you want to do it, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. But I think of them as an inoculation. I have a lot of people state things. And over the years, because I've read the Constitution, I've read the real article over and over and over again, when something doesn't smell right, I'm usually right, it's not right. That's what we need to do. It's the, we need to be willing to have, yes, we need to be willing to have non-compliance. More importantly, we need to be willing to support those who actually do not comply. We need to stop looking for somebody to say, oh, well, this person will lead us. No. Remember, the difference between what happened in Buffalo, New York, what happened in Texas was the people standing up to support the persons defending their rights. That's one of the reasons why I said to Constitution scholars, so that we could find each other, so that we could support each other, so that there's a reason why there's a group for each state. So you can, if you haven't signed up, please go sign up. It's free. If you have, please join your state group and let's start a discussion about what's going on in the 50 states, so we can find each other. So when somebody has a problem, we can rally to their defense. We can help them in person or financially or with information. When I met with my sheriff, which I recommend everybody do. Now, I live in a small town, small county. It's a lot easier. I made him a deal. I said, if when I call 911, you make sure your deputies show up. No, they're there to protect our rights. When you stand up for our rights, you call me, I will stand there with you. I will stand with you when you refuse to enforce illegal laws. I will stand with you and your deputies when they try to do what is right, if you stand with me. Now, after I finished confusing the sheriff, because I did something that I met the sheriff and I said, I want to sit down and talk with you. I want to understand your point of view on things. I want to explain my point of view on things. I want us to understand. Once I finished confusing him with that, imagine that from his standpoint. 2020, they beat up on law enforcement like you wouldn't believe. And here's somebody coming in saying, yes, I want something from you. I want your deputies to know their primary job. They took an oath to protect our rights. That's their primary job. And if you do that, I will be there with you. I will stand with you. I will support the work that you're doing. Imagine how that made this man feel. I wasn't simply asking for something. I was offering to help him. So when I hope, God forbid the day ever happens, I pick up that phone and I make that phone call, they understand, yeah, this is not simply some crackpot. This is somebody who's willing to support us. We're willing to support him. I think non-compliance, and again, it's funny with the non-compliance, because I don't know about where you guys are. Where I am, every store has a sign that says you have to wear a mask, or at least ask you to wear a mask, and nobody enforces it. In fact, I found two places, both medical outfits, by the way, that enforce the mask, their company's mask mandate. I'm not talking about public mandates. I'm talking about a company mask mandate. I've only found two. Yeah, that's a lot of non-compliance. Okay, so let's see, where are we on here? Mass ignorance, yeah, well, yes. There's two things I like to say. They tell you what you don't know won't hurt you. That's not true, but it's what you know that is true that really gets you messed up. There is a lot of ignorance, not stupid, but ignorant, meaning they don't know. We're not taught this in school. Law schools don't even teach the Constitution, and it's not that hard. So here, I was just looking at this. There's an organization called the 917 Society, 917.org, 917society.org. And what they do is they're trying to put a constitution in the hands of every eighth grader in the country. I think there are 3 or 4 states right now. This year I know they're trying to. I don't know how many states they're in, but if you want to find out more, again, 917society.org. If you can donate, if you can support them, help pay for those constitutions, great. If you want to work within your state to get these constitutions, they're neat. They have the Declaration, the Constitution, and I believe they actually have the citizenship test in there as well, or something. They're great. Check them out. It's a great organization to help do that. But let's stop looking for other people to teach us and our children. I keep saying it. It's the founding motto behind the Constitution study. John Jay, every member of the state ought diligently to read and study the Constitution of his country and teach the rising generation to be free. Right? By knowing their rights, so sooner perceiving they're violated, and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. Now, here's what I'm trying to do here. I heard some great stuff from another town in Tennessee, and it got me inspired. I'm trying to set up a rights event. We're still working on the details. I found a local business that's willing to work with me as far as helping to coordinate. Right, the local businessman knows a lot of people in town, and we want to put together. We don't know if it's going to be a rally or just a meeting, but it's going to be a chance to sit and talk about rights and how do we know when they're violated? How do we defend and assert them? And I recommend, if other places are interested, let's see what we can do. Go to the Constitution, post something in in your state group, and let's see if we can get these in other counties. It doesn't need to be a big deal. All right, you don't need lots of money and a big venue. Find a restaurant that will say, hey, I want a room, and we'll all show up. We'll buy breakfast, or we'll buy lunch, or we'll buy dinner, but we just want a separate room where we can have our discussion. Will you do that? And start there. Just start with meeting people that are interested in the Constitution. Discuss ideas. Maybe take away and research some of the stuff that you found. Let's start there. Then we can build on it. I met a couple. They do the Institute on the Constitution's U.S. Constitution class, a 12-week class. They wrapped up a class. They've got 2 going now. They had so much interest. They have 2 separate classes running at the same time to fill the need. That is wonderful. I love that. Let's see if we can, engage with people and first let's find other people that are interested. Let's find out how many people know something is wrong but don't quite know what to do about it. They have this sense that something just isn't right, and all they really need is a little bit of encouragement. Let's do that. Let's be those places. And if you start one, again, please put it on the scholars. Let other people know so we can all join. And if you happen to live in Bedford County, Tennessee, or any of the neighboring counties, by all means, reach out to me through the studies website, the scholars website, and let's see what we can do to start an interesting discussion about our rights, about protecting them, and about defending them. And let's deal with the ignorance, not through, we got to rearrange the whole school system. No, we just need to learn to read for ourselves. Let's see, patriots are banding together. That's why they're removing Parler and branding militia groups. Well, I think what happened to Parler and to me and a bunch of others is less about preventing people from banding together. I believe that's part of it. If you want to do a little research, Read up on the Cultural Revolution in China under Mao Zedong. And of course, you can also look at what the Nazis did to the Jews in Germany. You can also look at what Stalin did with many of the other ethnic groups within in the Soviet Union. What you're seeing is, I see. Well, I see two reasons. One is, yes, they don't think, they don't want people to talk about this stuff because they don't want it heard. Right. That's what I said. I don't know so much it's about consciously preventing people from getting together. It's these are things other people don't want heard. And let's face it, how many generations have gone through school being told that their feelings are most important? If somebody says something you don't like, well, you have the right to shut them up. This is the logical progression of political correctness. I remember in the 80s and 90s when political correctness was getting started, people said, well, where does it end? Oh, no. Here's where it goes, to the point where now, what was it? She was an actress on The Mandalorian. She lost her job at Disney Plus because she posted a message about, be careful, we're doing the same things they did in Nazi Germany, and that's not a good thing. Is it really, oh yeah, we're doing it against political rivals rather than religious rivals, but really we should be careful about that. It is a dangerous time, but it's not a surprising time. This is the logical progression. And we have a society that's been told, if you don't like something, you have the right to shut other people up. And we're just seeing that happen. Read the Federalist Papers and what Hamilton wrote. I've read the Federalist. I haven't read them recently, but I do read several of them frequently. And yeah, I mean, again, they're in the term Federalist Papers. The Federalists wanted a powerful central government. They did not want an all-powerful central government. They understood. Even the Federalists said, "Listen, nothing in the Constitution gives the central government the power to infringe on the rights of the people." That's why they argued against a Bill of Rights. Right? There's a difference between a powerful, a strong government and a large government. We have we have one of the most powerful militaries in the world, very powerful. They're part of the government. That makes our government very powerful. That doesn't make it necessarily big. Big comes from what it can do. Powerful and strong has to do with its ability to do what it's allowed to do. So, nothing that I've read in the Federalist Paper come to mind that leads me to believe that Alexander Hamilton, Jay, Madison expected the federal government to go beyond the scope of the Constitution. In fact, when he was in the House of Representatives, Madison argued against paying, against bounties, in this case for cod fisheries, against paying people because of problems in their jobs, right? Oh, they're at a disadvantage. We should pay them bounties. We should encourage this. He says, no, if you do that, we'll get involved with everything. We'll get involved with religion. We'll get involved with education. We'll get involved with everything. So you've got, Madison saying, no, there are limits to what the federal government can do. You have Hamilton saying, no, there are limits to what the federal government can do. And when the federal government tries to do something beyond its scope, it's void. Right? It's the distinction between a government that can do what it's been entrusted to do, that's strong enough and powerful enough to do what it's been entrusted to do, and one that is powerful to do what it's not been instructed to do, what has not been authorized to do. There's a huge difference with that. I guess BSH. I guess he's got snow. Well, you know what? There's a reason why I don't live up north anymore. When I was looking to leave the empire, I checked out a website that listed the freedom of the 50 states. It ranked them based on all these different categories, and the top three candidates for me to move were North Dakota, South Dakota, and Tennessee. And in Tennessee, I don't have to shovel sunshine. We get an inch of snow down here, and it's a blizzard, and everyone's what's going on. So, okay, let's see. I've been running for office since I was 18. Next time I run, I'm going to print off an application, and my speech will be a cover letter. Campaign up like a job app. Oh, there you go. So, all right, there you go. And BSH, that is a great idea. I like that. So let's make it it's a resume and a job application, and I'd love to use that as a teaching moment to say, yeah, I am applying for a job from you, and act like a job interview. That I think that's kind of cool. BSH, are you the one that's up in? Yeah, you're up in Wyoming. I haven't been to Wyoming yet. But when my daughter was young, I traveled a lot for work, and one of the things I used to do, we homeschooled. Wherever I went, whatever state I went to, I always sent back a postcard from that state. So that was a geography test, right? Oh, I was in here. I haven't been to Wyoming. It became a running thing in the family. I haven't been to Wyoming, so I need a good excuse to get up to Wyoming and teach some stuff. Now, I prefer when it's a little warmer than 17 degrees and maybe not so much snow, but heck, I was in North Dakota last February. I can live with snow and cold. So that's a great idea. Where do we get the Anti-Federalist Papers? Well, at Motate, that's a great idea. I can. There's two places you can go. One is if you go to Constitution Scholars. Yes, this is a plug. If you go to constitutionscholars.com and you register, there's a reference library, and I have a link to the Anti-Federalist Papers that I got from. I actually got a copy from thefederalistpapers.org. So they have both the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist Papers. But you can go to thefederalistpapers.org and search for Anti-Federalist Papers, or you can go to Constitution Scholars. Actually, let me take a look here. You can go to Constitution Scholars, and if you go to the reference library, you will find a link to the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist. Let me show this here. Share screen. Hang on. I got the wrong screen out. How do I go in here? I want you. There we go. I almost showed you the back end, which wouldn't do any of you any good because you don't have access to it. All right, so here's my account on the Constitution Scholars. By the way, since I'm the admin, I have access to everything. But if you go to libraries, you go to reference library, and you'll see I'm still working on the constitutions of several states, but you'll see right there, Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers. You can go and you can find them. And in fact, my next big book project, I haven't had time to really work on it much, but if I can get this other stuff going and a little more self-sufficient, I actually want to write a book where I'm going to compare the Federalist Papers to the Anti-Federalist Papers topic by topic. So, I'm going to go through each of the papers on both sides, and when I've got a topic that matches, I'm going to compare them side by side. I think that'd be a very interesting thing to do. So if you're interested, let me know. That's probably my next large project. By the way, I've also added a second dictionary. I had somebody complain that they didn't like the fact that I used the 1828 dictionary. I personally disagree, but I did include the Johnson 1755 dictionary as another dictionary people can use, and the Free Legal Dictionary. I use that for modern terms. So, for example, when I'm reviewing a court case and the court uses a term, I will use the free legal dictionary to get the modern interpretation. When I'm talking about the Constitution, I'll always go back to one of the older ones. So that's a good question where you can find that. Let's see. Thing is, okay, where are we here? Hey, not a problem. When I went to the U.S. Postal Service, they made me use a mask. Again, how much are you willing to push? We're back to, okay, do you have to go to the post office? Can I do something else? But the other thing, you can go in there. And so if you go to constitutionstudy.com and you search for knowing your rights, I wrote up a placard and it shows all the laws that are being violated by mask mandates. Fifth Amendment, well, not the 14th Amendment in that case, but it's a violation of the Fifth Amendment. It's a violation of 18 U.S.C. 242. It's null, it's void. The federal government can set standards for the Postal Service employees, and they refer to the Postal Service as quasi. It's really weird because it's quasi government agency. It's not actually an agency. It's kind of this spin-off company thing, but it's not really private. It's still run and funded by the federal government. So you can simply say, I'm sorry, you cannot deprive me of my liberty without due process of law. And to do so, using an invalid law as a standard is a violation of 18 U.S.C. 242, which can get you personally punished by up to a year in jail. And that kind of sets people back on their heels a bit. Will it mean that they'll say, oh, okay, go ahead? Yeah, probably not. But it's back to this, asserting, wait a second, I have rights. I'm asserting my right to be at liberty. I am pointing out that you're breaking the law. And, do I expect the government to rein in an illegal government agency? Not at this point in time. But unless we start pushing back, it's never going to happen. Okay, let's see. We started a group in my town called the Watchmen, where we are ready to go to court together. We are ready to stand up in front of a business and stand up for that owner. I like that. Organized or not, the idea that you're going to stand up for a business, for an owner. And this isn't a big business, small business dig. It really isn't. Because I don't care if it's the Walmart manager or if it's my local barber. If they're standing up for the right thing, I want to do business with them. I want to support the work that they're doing. Is it standing up? Maybe. If it's standing there in front of the sheriff's deputy or the local police officer saying, no, here's what the Constitution, you swore or affirmed an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and of our state. Here's what you're violating there. You're violating this. Explain to them, understand most of the people you encounter have no clue what the Constitution says. Like I said, the guy in Buffalo says, no, you need a warrant. And the code enforcement or the health department says, but I'm not a police officer. Doesn't matter. The government is not allowed to search without a warrant unless they can prove an exigent circumstance. And you don't have one. You are trespassing. And when the sheriff's deputy said, we're just trying to do our job, he says, no, your job is to remove the trespasser. She's violating my rights. Your job is to remove her. Right? Educate. And too often I see people they start puffing up their chests and sometimes what you really need to start out with educating. If you educate them and they're still going to do something stupid, that's on them. If you confront them without educating them, you're asking for them to push back, and that's the big thing, right? If you puff up your chest and say, no, that's my right, you can't do that. Just like if you walk into a courtroom and say, well, that law is void, and so I don't have to follow it. You're challenging you've pushed them into a corner. If you come in and says, "Excuse me, but the Constitution says this, and this says this, and so this is where what you're doing is wrong, or what I want to do is right." You've given them the chance to take in information and process it. If they decide not to, which a lot of them don't, that's on them. Okay. Going to go to a town hall meeting this Saturday. Good town hall meeting. All right. I own a bakery, and our sign has said from day one of mask mandates that says we don't have the authority to enforce mask mandates, and has the contact for the sheriff and the governor. Well, BSH, if it's a privately owned bakery, in other words, if it's not run by the government, you actually do have the authority to enforce a mask mandate on your property. The fact that you decide not to is your own decision. It's public mask mandates that are a problem. And as I've said, if all these stores have signs, if a business wishes to enforce a mask mandate, a private business wishes to enforce a mask mandate on their premises, that is their right. Right? I am not forced to do business with them, so I get to decide what's more important to me, doing business with them or not wearing a mask. And I make a rational decision, and I go on about my life, and that's the end of it. But when the governor or some bureaucrat says you have to wear a mask in public, no, you have no authority to do that. In fact, you are actually prohibited from saying that. So yeah, go away. And if you want to press it, okay, but understand, my if I value my right enough to fight for it, I'm going to fight for it. And that's the distinction. Which is why, by the way, I say you travel in groups. Everyone carries a phone with a camera on it. You record everything. And I guess it was a Tunnel Lord, I think, sent me a video. It was extremely disturbing, the video, but it's important that what happened was recorded so that we have evidence, we have proof. Oh, you want to have me up to Wyoming? Well, I love it. The one thing I would ask, because at the moment I'm not flying. If they're going to tell me that in order to fly, I have to get a COVID test or some ridiculous stuff like that, I'm not flying. I'll drive. I got no problem driving. I love driving, and I'd love to do a tour up through. I have somebody in North Dakota that is planning an event for some time, I think this summer. The date has been set. I've got someone else in Minnesota I'm trying to set up an event with. So if you get something going, where'd I go? I saw something distract me. Sorry. Let me know. I'd love to coordinate and hit more than one thing while I'm up in that part of the country. So yeah, let me know. You can, again, I have a speaker request form on the Constitution study, but whatever information, I would be more than happy. I love meeting people, and I will do whatever I can to meet them. But if I can fit 2 or 3 events in one trip, that makes my life easier on me. Tunnel Lord, yeah, when you got the email, there should have been Zoom information in the invitation I sent you. So if you look, there should be Zoom information. It says join Zoom meeting. If not, I'll send me an email or something, and I'll send you the link. We'll get that all set up. Well, you know what? It's funny because I did set up on Gab, and I've got so far I've got apps. See, I think it rounds up to 0 0 response for anything I've done on Gab. Now, Gab is a bit of is not the easiest because I can't automate it, so it's a little it's a little slower. But if I'm not quite sure how to get right now. Nobody seems to be seeing me on Gab, but yeah, if we can figure out a way to get me on these platforms so that other people, I think a lot of it is people just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So I'd love to see that. And you're not going to enforce. Okay, yeah. The bakery sign, BSH. That I love it. That wasn't maybe if I'd seen the sign, but it didn't. At least when you described it, that wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. It was we can't enforce a mask mandate. I would have maybe if I saw the sign, it would have triggered differently. But that's cool. The idea is, you're not going to enforce a mask mandate. I would have, I would have phrased it, hey, we're not going to try. We're not gonna. You have a right to go about your business however you want, and we are not going to make you wear a mask in here because this is our private property, and the government cannot deprive it without due process. So cool. All right, tunnel log set for tomorrow. Again, I don't know. I'm not. I don't know Gab that well. I just signed up for it. I've been posting some of the articles and videos when they pop up. Actually, I haven't checked over here anywhere. Let's see. Hey, Sean, how you doing? What about Hamilton talking about implied powers? I'd have to read the context because implied powers. Let's take a quick look at something here, only because you've piqued my interest. Oops. Let's see. Oops. Wrong one. I'm searching for the. Yeah, I'm looking at the Anti-Federalist Papers, not the Federalist Papers. This will take This will take a little bit more research because they redid the place where I used to have the Federalist Papers. They rearranged how they did it, and it's not as easy to get around as used to. Because
I can't say whether or not it's in the Federalist Papers. I know there was an instance where Hamilton was talking about the implied powers to create the first bank of the United States, because the Constitution gives the Department of Treasury, and because they have a treasury, they can create the first bank of the United States. He said it's implied in the Constitution.
Well, Congress has the authority to coin money. Right? Implying that would include creating a bank through which to distribute the money. But again, Hamilton was hung up on a Bank of the United States. That was his thing. Right. But yeah, I don't see it. I'm not surprised. But again, implied powers only exist within the framework of what's actually written in the document. Right? So I'm trying to think of this. I see this referred to. Well, they refer to the police powers of the state. The states are not granted police power anywhere in the Constitution. Those words do not exist. That implication does not exist. Or another one would be the idea of separation of church and state. the words separation of church and state don't exist in the Constitution. The idea of separation of church and state is implied in the First Amendment's restrictions against creation and restriction, but it is the protection. What is actually implied by the free exercise clause and the establishment clause? What's implied is the government has no business doing anything with religion. Not the government has any authority to keep religion out of the public. So implication has to fall within the actual language. And I think the power, again, the power to coin money. Okay, they need a mint, and the mint makes the money. The process then what am I asking this Bank of the United States to do? There's no implied power to loan money. It's not implied there. Again,
is that not what a bank does? A bank is in business to loan money. I mean, if you're just looking to coin money, then that would make the U.S. Mint a constitutional institution.
Correct.
But to have a central bank, which is loaning out money, then that would make it unconstitutional.
Yes.
So the position of implied powers in that situation would not be constitutional.
Correct, because he's implying a power that does not fit within the context of the actual language. Right? If he said, well, listen, the way we're going to coin money is we're going to create the Bank of the United States. They're going to coin the money and they're going to move it into circulation. Right? That would have been a constitutional function of a entity that they called the Bank of the United States. But when you once you get into, but wait a second, banks loan money. So yes, you could imply that, well, how are we going, you could say, well, yeah, it's implied that we have to have some way of coining money and getting it out there, and we're going to do it through a bank, right, where other institutions come and get the coins from us. They bring us gold, and we give them coins, right? Just like going to the bank and saying, well, here's a roll of quarters, give me a $10 bill, right? But beyond that, the function of a bank that we see today of lending money, that is not implied by the Constitution. He may have wanted it to be, but it's not. It's one of the interesting things I deal with is simply because a single individual, a single founding father stated a purpose doesn't mean that that's the actual language that got included in the Constitution, because it was a compromise. Everything in the Constitution is a compromise of one form or another. So, and knowing Hamilton's penchant for a Bank of the United States, I think that was a bit more of wishful thinking.
That was my point. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. Sorry I didn't see that before, but I've only got so much screen real estate. And it's interesting. I'm not getting a lot of people on the Zoom call, and I don't know if it's because people just prefer watching on, looks like mostly on YouTube. But I do have this Zoom call because you notice, Sean and I just had a conversation, which to me, it's kind of cool. It's a lot easier, if you notice what I'm reading through the comments, sometimes they get out of sync, right? Because I got two people commenting and all that. I like conversations. Conversations are cool. So, but all right. So let's see. I'm not seeing any new comments coming through. I am still trying to get the registration working for the Zoom call. So if Sean, I added you because you specifically asked for it. I'm still working on getting that straightened out because every piece of software I find does about 3/4 of what I needed to do. But I'm still doing these. We're doing it the second and the fourth Sunday. I like the fact that we're spending time answering questions. So I still want to have some short little, hey, this is what's on my mind at the moment. But I like the fact that we're dealing with questions. I like the way a lot of these questions are going. I'm looking forward to talking to people heading up to Wyoming and seeing the big sky up there and checking things out. I am going to send you back and ask you once again, please check out the Constitution Scholars. It's this communication aspect that I think is extremely important, and understand the Constitution Scholars is not hosted on some third party application. Right? Don't worry about the scholars. If the only way they can shut the scholars down is if my web hosting service shuts me down, and I've already found about a dozen others that said they will take my service, they'll take my business if they want it. So this is I intentionally going for things that are hosted on my own sites where I have control because I don't trust people anymore. But with that, hey guys, it's been a great time, wonderful chat, and keep in touch. I will see you hopefully in 2 weeks. What you'll notice, what I've been doing is I've been generally the Monday or Tuesday before the event, when I've come up with a title, I put a post on the website so that one, it hits social media, but it also will give you, you can watch it there, and it's got a link for the countdown and all that fun and all that fun stuff. I will work on being a little more proactive with the emails, since it looks like whatever tool that I was going to use, it's still giving me a hard time. But so little reminders as I come up with these things. And if nobody else has any other questions, I kind of been stalling for a little bit, but nobody else has any questions, I'll let everybody go. Again, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope I'll see you all next time on the Constitution Study. Have a great night, everyone.
There's one thing you have to know.